Sci-fi. It's the genre of the imagination, and science fiction films have opened up a whole new world of futuristic settings and technologies for audiences to enjoy. Although they typically take place in the future, directors use them as a means to communicate the hopes and worries of the time they were made. The very first science fiction films were often very large in scope, taking place in completely different worlds or featuring technology considered to be impossible at the time. Over time, however, they have shifted to focus more on the human element, often featuring settings that are not too much different from modern Earth.
George Méliès' A Trip to the Moon is considered to be one of the first ever science fiction films to be made. It depicts a group of men traveling to the moon, something that would not occur for another 60 years at the time the film was made. It is notable for its groundbreaking special effects, which become a hallmark of the sci-fi genre. Another early seminal science fiction film is Fritz Lang's Metropolis, the first ever full-length sci-fi film. It takes place in the far future and features fully humanoid robots, which we are still far from achieving today. Lang used science fiction as a means to convey the struggles of the German people to his audience, at a time when most people used movies as a means to escape their worries.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. We've gone for main engine start. We have.
Science fiction films became the most popular during the 50s and the 60s. In this time period, the possibilities of space travel were on everybody's minds, which helped fuel the imagination. One such film created during this time period was 1950's Destination Moon. At the time this movie was made, many people were concerned about the feasibility of space travel, and this film depicts some of the risks inherent in traveling outside Earth's atmosphere. This time period also saw the release of Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, considered to be one of the most important films of the 60s. Just like the previous films, this movie reflected the concerns and worries of the people at the time. Kubrick captured the fear of technology and the hope of space exploration in his masterpiece. And just over a decade after the release of 2001 A Space Odyssey, the world would see the release of one of the most influential science fiction horror films. While it was a film that also concerned itself with space, like so many others before it, it was unique because it heavily drew influence from horror films and simply used science fiction as a backdrop to the suspense, choosing to focus on the atmosphere rather than the setting to convey the very human element of fear.
Science fiction films eventually moved away from being focused on space travel and instead became concerned with more modern worries rather than exploring the unknown. The 90s also saw a large growth in both the popularity and the quality of computer-generated images, which allowed filmmakers to create never-before-seen special effects. 1999's The Matrix was a very influential science fiction film that responded to the rise of the internet in the 90s and featured the now famous special effects that were considered groundbreaking at the time.
Just focus on the memories. Patrick.
More modern science fiction films became even more grounded in reality. The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was a 2004 science fiction romance film that subverted common expectations of the genre and contained very few conventions of science fiction. While it did feature futuristic technology, it was not as outlandish as some of the films preceding it, and was not set in the future.
Spike Jonze's Her is another recent sci-fi film grounded in reality. It is set in the very near future, and its world is not too much different from ours today. In fact, it is very easy to imagine our world looking like this in a few years. The movie tells a love story while also examining the growing role of technology in our daily lives. Science fiction films have evolved an enormous amount in the past 100 years. They first featured impossible technologies and strange new worlds, like in A Trip to the Moon, but now take a step back from outlandish settings to focus on the human element. Only time will tell what science fiction films will be like in another 100 years.